66% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and most of those people don't even have an emergency fund, much less a plan for reaching financial freedom. And it's easy to blame the economy, the education system, inflation, the cost of raising a family, or anything else. But the truth is, those aren't really the problem. The real reason that most people never reach financial freedom is because of the mindset that keeps them making terrible financial decisions. I call this the luxury trap. And it's the reason that 99% of Americans are trapped in their jobs past the age of 50. And yes, that is a real statistic. But if you change this mindset, you could easily reach financial freedom decades faster. And it is a huge reason that I'm on track to retire before I turn 30. But before I explain what the luxury trap is and how to break out of it, I first need to explain why most people will never reach financial independence and why rich people still think they're poor. And then I'll show you exactly how to change your mindset and how changing your mindset could make it possible to retire in your early 40s. Why most people will never reach financial independence. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American spends $52,000 per year. And that's just the average per person. The average family spends way more than that. Now, $52,000 per year might not be crazy for someone living in New York City or San Francisco, but this is an insane amount of money for the average person to be spending. This still wouldn't be a problem if the average American earned $100,000 per year, but of course that is not the case. After taxes, the average American only earns $54,000 per year. That means the average American is spending 95% of their paycheck every year, which is why 66% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And here's why that's such a big issue. If you spent 95% of your income, you would never reach financial independence. And you can see why using some super basic math. The rule of thumb is that you need 25 times your annual expenses to retire. And if your annual expenses are 95% of your income, then you need 23.75 times your annual salary in retirement savings to be able to quit your job. And if you spend 95% of your income, that means you're only saving 5% of your income every year. So that will obviously take a long time. If you earn $50,000 per year, a 5% savings rate means you'd only be saving $2,500 per year while spending the other $47,500. You would want approximately $1.19 million before quitting your job. And without investing, that would take 475 years, assuming your savings rate never changed. Investing speeds this up dramatically, but you would still have to work over 50 years before you would have enough money to retire. And this exact same math holds even if you earned $500,000 per year. Sure, you would be saving $25,000 per year, but you would have to save up way more money to support your lifestyle. So the average American is not on track to retire, at least not before they turn 70. Now, a lot of people will say,
well, clearly, the average American just isn't paid well enough then.
But I don't think that's true. Because if you look at the data, you'll actually see that it doesn't matter how much money people are paid. The average person still manages to spend at least 90% of their income. In fact, most people earning over $100,000 per year are still living paycheck to paycheck too. So earning a great income is clearly not the solution to everything. And this brings us to why rich people think they're poor. And we just covered one reason for this. Even though people might earn a great income, they actually are poor. They might be able to buy everything they want, but they're nowhere close to financial freedom. They're still stuck in their soul-crushing jobs. But really, there's a more fundamental reason that rich people still think they're poor. And once you understand this, you'll be able to change your mindset to reach financial independence. The underlying issue is that normal is a moving target. And let me tell you a story to explain what I mean by this. When I was in high school, having a car meant you had money. It could be the most worn down and beat up car ever, but it was still a sign of money and status. And then in college, the new status symbol was having a single bedroom. If you could afford to sleep in your own room rather than having a roommate, that meant you were doing pretty well. But once I graduated, all of those things stopped being status symbols. All of a sudden, having a car wasn't enough to have status. You had to have a really fancy car. Kids my age were driving Corvettes to the office. And having a bedroom to yourself was not enough anymore. All of a sudden, you had to have your own apartment with no roommates at all. And even better, you needed to be in a modern skyrise apartment building or to own your own house. As soon as people make money, the things that were once luxuries just become normal. And this keeps happening. As you earn more money, there is more pressure to eat at fancy restaurants, drive an even nicer car, and live in $1 million mansion. And for super rich people, it might be normal to have a private chef, a car collection, and 3 homes. And there will always be someone with more money than you and with nicer things. No matter what you think is a luxury, to someone, it's just normal. And even worse, all of these expensive things won't make you much happier. They just become so normalized that they don't feel like the luxuries that they are. People don't feel like they have everything they wanted. Now, they just have a more expensive list of things they feel like they need, and even more expensive things that now feel like luxuries. I've seen so many people fall into this mindset, and it's keeping them broke. I call this the luxury trap. No reasonable person would say they need a private jet or their own personal yacht. Those things are considered luxuries. You're not deprived if you don't own them. Yet I've met so many people who feel like they are deprived if they don't have a nice sports car, a big house, and their $8 Starbucks coffee every morning. But why are those things considered normal? You don't need those things any more than you need a private jet or a yacht. As long as you live in a relatively wealthy country, which almost all of my viewers do, almost every single thing you own is a luxury. Everyone around you might have the same things, but those things were not available for 99% of human history. But of course, people don't think of it that way. They only compare themselves to the people around them, who are usually just as wealthy. And that's why the average American is spending 95% of their income every year just to keep up with everyone else. The luxury trap prevents almost everyone from reaching financial freedom. But you don't have to stay trapped. So let me explain exactly how to change your mindset. The reason so few people escape the luxury trap is they feel like they're depriving themselves if they cut back their expenses, even if those expenses would seem like luxuries to everyone else. So to break this mindset, you have to remind yourself of this simple fact. You are always depriving yourself of something. Money can buy almost anything you want, but it can't buy everything you want. You will always have to make decisions about what to buy and what not to buy. And most people trade their money for things, because that's what everyone else does. But there's something even more important that you can buy. Because by spending all of your money on things, you're just depriving yourself of something else. You're depriving yourself of time. You have to work for every dollar you earn. So every time you buy something, you are trading time that you have to work for that object. But if you saved your money and ideally invested it, you can buy back your time. And once you've saved enough, you never have to work again. So every time you're making a purchase, ask yourself whether you would rather have that thing or more of your time. You can either deprive yourself of the object, or you can deprive yourself of your literal life. And this is why I don't feel deprived even though I live extremely frugally. I feel the loss of my time much more than I feel the loss of another gizmo or gadget. So I don't mind riding a bike or cooking for myself or living with roommates, because I recognize that by doing all of those things, I'm reaching financial freedom decades faster than most people. And as long as you force yourself to confront this trade-off between buying things versus buying time every time you make a purchase, I guarantee it's going to change your spending habits. And I wanted to very briefly demonstrate just how powerful changing this mindset could be. The average American family consists of 2.4 people and makes $83,195 per year, even after taxes. Again, the average American spends 95% of their income. But if you broke out of the luxury trap and changed your mindset, you could easily live on $50,000. If you're single, you could live on a lot less than that, even in an expensive city. And if you could live on $50,000 per year and make $83,195 per year, you would be saving $33,195 per year, or $2,766.25 per month. Using the 4% rule of thumb, you would probably want about $1.25 million to retire, which would only take about 19 years. So if you change this mindset, you could easily retire in your early 40s, and maybe even earlier. And if you want more details about the example that I just gave, I made an entire video explaining how the average person could realistically retire early without making a crazy amount of money or even being extremely frugal. And I explained it in this video right here, so check it out next.